to be relevant. What do I mean by being relevant? And as I get into this understanding, and as I was doing my study concerning the word that I'm bringing forth tonight, to be relevant means to me to be useful. To be relevant to me, it means to be applicable. Meaning that it is something that I cannot just talk about, but it's something that can also be applied. And it works. It's to be applicable. That is what it means for me to be relevant. Number 3, to be relevant, it means to be timely in season. Timely in season. It is one thing to be in season, but it's another thing to be in time of the season. And to be relevant, number 3 for me, it means to have the capacity to solve a now problem. To solve a now problem. So around the message tonight, these are the dynamics that I'll be using for you to understand the shift to be relevant message that God has given me. So to be relevant means, number 1, to be useful. Number 2, it means to be applicable. Number 3, it means to be timely in season. And number 4, it means to have the capacity to solve a now problem. I am praying to God that in the generation in which we live, we will have people who have the capacity to solve now problems. Not yesterday's problem, but now problem. If there has to be a problem that will rise today, I want us to have a generation that have the ability to fix now problem and not just yesterday's problem. In as much as you were good yesterday, yesterday's good is not good enough for today. So there got to be an actualization of yourself. There has to be a daily update of your old version. Each and every day, you must make sure that you are a better version of yourself. Yesterday, the version you were should not be the version you are today. So each and every morning, we must download a new version of ourselves. And one thing that you must understand as well is that the dynamics of life is to understand that things changes and the world changes every time. Hence, the people attempt or change too in attempt to accommodate themselves to the times in which we are. Times are changing faster than we are thinking. Times are changing and the world is changing at a fast pace, and sometimes it is even difficult for us to catch up. And the world is changing, and it's changing very fast to the point that some university graduates, but the moment they obtain their qualification and the moment they find employment, what they learn in school become irrelevant for what they're going to be doing in their job. So you might as well just graduate, and by the time you're finding your job, you start to learn again. It's as if it is a new principle, a new thing that you are doing, and none of all that you have learned in school. Why? Because the world is moving very fast. And there is a need for actualization. There's a need for updates. There's a need for us to become a new version of ourselves each and every day. Today, a person who is over 75 years old will use a cell phone, and that cell phone they are using, it is not just a hello to hello cell phone, but it is a smartphone because of the time in which we are. But the time when they were born, or the time when they were growing as teenagers, they did not even have cell phones, but they have to actualize themselves to the times in which we are. You cannot say, no, I was born in 1942, therefore I don't need a cell phone. You will have struggle to communicate in our generation. Why? Because the times have changed, and just because you were born into a certain generation does not mean that you cannot actualize yourself in the now generation. Am I making sense? There are people, when they were born, there were no airplane. And just because in the time when you were born, there were no airplanes, does not mean that you cannot use an airplane in today's world. Otherwise, how will you get to America? And there I hear the Lord saying to you that you will travel the world. How will you travel the world unless you actualize yourself, you update yourself to the time that we are in and the season in which we live? Now, the problem is that most of us rather stay in yesterday's season instead of us actualizing ourselves. You see, the devil has a way to get involved in anything, but that does not mean that anything is evil. The devil has a way to get involved in many things, but that does not mean that the devil or that everything is evil. We are in a generation of information. We're in a generation where information really moves fast. Fast. There can be something that happens in this church right now, and in the next 6 seconds, the whole world knows about it. But then now, the problem is not the information. The problem is, how do we use the information? That's what makes the difference between an angel and a demon. There are people who can have information and use it against other people. But there are people who can have information and use it to help other people. And certain time in the church, we have people who have information, but they use information to destroy others instead of building others. The difference between angels and demons is how they use information. Satan knows the word. He comes to Jesus. He said, Jesus, it is written. Satan knows the word. And he says, it is written. And you are a Christian in 2015, you don't know the word. I wonder how you will fight. I wonder how you will survive. Because if your enemy knows the word better than you, we're in trouble. We got to be relevant. And thank God Jesus was a relevant man. Even when the enemy brings the word, he knows how to defend the word by bringing another word. It is also written. It is also. Now you only have one verse that you've memorized. And that's a word that the enemy used to attack you. What will you use to counter-attack him? Somebody say shift to be irrelevant. It is important for us to understand that the things that God wants us to do, it is not only the things that happened yesterday. Oh, yesterday might have been a great. Oh, last year might have been a great season. In the days when you were born, life might have been beautiful. But it is beautiful for then. But when you talk about it now, it is boring. Just to tell you how fast life is going, is that there are certain stories I cannot tell my child. You'll be asking me, what is that? It's not been more than 15 years that we've been using cassettes. But if I talk to my son what cassette is, he will never understand what it means. To have a pen and you have to rewind or fast forward with a pen. Oh, you're too young. I remember when a compact CD, when it came out, everybody was talking about it. When in your house you have a compact CD, and now, if you come and tell me that you just bought a brand new compact CD, you are irrelevant. Because time changed. And very soon, the children of our children will never know what a CD means. What is it? Home video? Where you used to go rent movies? No, box office is now. Home video. What other places? No, the place where we went to rent these VHS tapes. Mr. Video. You had to open an account, and every time you rent a movie, you pay 25 rand. But now, you don't have time. No, how many of you has those cassette readers? Cassette readers. Video, you put in, and you have to watch the head when the image begins to kind of. Times are changing. Times are. Now, even the DVD you can't go rent anymore because you have it on your remote. There are new online services that you don't even need DSTV to watch movies now. All you need is just internet. You pay 100 rand and you watch as many movies as you want. Times are changing. There are certain businesses that used to be on top yesterday, but because the times have changed, it has to shift. And if it doesn't shift, the business dies. That's why you ask yourself, this person used to have money. How is it that today they are the way they are? How is it possible that their business is not running? It's not that the business is not doing good. It's just that the times have changed and the business has not been able to shift with the time in which we are. If you have a business today and you don't have a website for the business, there is no way you can be able to prosper in that business. Because if I need food and I don't know where to eat, all I got to do is to Google, where can I find nice food? Now you can have good food, but you will not be found because you are not visible in the age where we are in. Somebody said to be relevant means to be applicable, to be useful, to be a solution to a now problem. This year we went in LA, and even the person that took us there, it was the first time that they went to LA. And it was very difficult. Every time we had to find something to eat, we had to go on the internet. Now we go for the most recommended restaurant online. And you know what happens? You get there, there is a queue to enter the restaurant. Why? Because everybody has followed what is online. One morning we ate breakfast at 12 simply because we were waiting in the queue since 8. The place was recommended and we had to travel about 40 minutes outside of the city. Now you're saying I have the best soup in town, but you are not visible and not relevant to the times in which we are. You will close down with your good soup. Am I talking to somebody? There's a need that rises, and it's rising urgently for the church people to update themselves. Church people, when you become a Christian, does not mean that you become retarded in your thinking. Being a Christian does not mean that your thinking is now retarded. You are only thinking yesterday. All your friends are talking about the latest, and you are talking about the oldest. I never use an old software on my phone. I always use the latest software on my phone. Why? Because I don't want to be in yesterday's conversation. I want to be in today's conversation. And before a software is released, I make sure I read all the features on the software, so by the time it comes out, I know how to use the software and not look down with something new. That's what happens when people are not willing to be relevant in their time. One thing you realize is that knowledge is progressive. You never know enough. Just because you learned yesterday or in the previous version or in the previous season does not mean that you can no longer learn today. Yesterday's knowledge is not enough to deal with today's issues. That's why in companies you will hear the employers sending employees to training simply because just because you have a degree does not mean that it's enough. You got to update your knowledge. Staying relevant comes with the responsibility of, number one, having a flexible spirit. Being relevant comes with the responsibility of having a flexible spirit. There are so many people that are so stiff in their spirit that they can't learn something new. You gotta have a flexible spirit. A flexible spirit is like this wire. You can make it into any shape. You can take it in any environment. It will still be useful. And there are people, when you take them out of the environment in which they operate, everything dies. God give us a flexible spirit. The second responsibility that comes with being relevant is that we must have a teachable spirit. Teachable spirit. There are people who are Mr. Know-it-all, while in their brain is zero knowledge. You know, I went here. I've been there. You know, I know how to do this. In fact, I was using it yesterday. But when you ask him, can you do it? It begins to crumble his mouth. A teachable spirit is a virtue from God. There are things you master in life and there are things you need to learn to master in life. There are things I can do without learning them, but there are things I need to focus, concentrate myself before I do them. But when I don't have a teachable spirit, I will fail in some areas of my life and fail to be relevant to my season. The third responsibility of being relevant is that we must learn to let go of yesterday. We must learn to let go of yesterday. I feel like the materials that I'm giving you is really worth of conference materials. Learn to let go of yesterday. I said yesterday that yesterday's shelter can become tomorrow's prison. So you must learn to let go of yesterday. Don't have one foot in yesterday and one foot in today. You will end up breaking in the middle. An outdated virus not only cannot clean the computer's viruses, but it also slows down the computer. That's why you will notice that there are people who have become so slow to capture and understand certain things. Why? Because they are outdated. An old mind cannot conquer today's challenge. That's why the Bible says that you cannot put new wine into an old wine skin. It will break and the wine will be spilled. There are certain people, when you want to teach them, you are wasting your time because their mind is